This is July 31, 1984. First psychoanalytic session of Mr. Stanley. We start at 2:20, and in the room are Professor Bastian. Mr. Stanley, how do you feel?
Terrible.
Huh? You feel terrible?
Terrible.
What do you feel? I can't understand you. What happened? You feel bad? Are you sleepy? Do you know now where you are?
Yes, with you.
Fine. May I have a talk with you now?
Yeah.
Do you remember that we spoke about your conflict with Professor Meyer? Can you tell me what it was that he did not understand?
Everything.
Huh?
Everything.
Everything. You understood?
I told my wife about
Huh?
nonsense. I mean, nonsense is very sorry. I beg my wife to let me go. Let's go back to you.
I cannot understand you quite well. Can you speak a little louder?
I told my wife to let me go back home.
You talk about your wife?
Yes, what happened while she was pregnant?
Where is she? In Germany?
I told her that my treatment was no good. He was... I told her that he was something of an egomaniac. And that was not what was required.
Did you love your wife?
Well, in the beginning.
In the beginning. And why did it go wrong?
Because she's immature.
She is immature. And you?
I felt that she was immature.
You had hoped she would be more mature.
Yes.
And that she could be a good mother for you.
Well, a wife.
And a wife. And you got children?
Yeah, but she got pregnant after the very first week of marriage.
She got pregnant in the first week of the marriage?
Well, thereabouts. I was a bit annoyed because it was...
You was not up to it?
What?
You was not up to it? That your wife would...
Well, obviously up to it from a physiological point of view. But she really didn't see what she came to. What happened was this, she came from Canada.
Your wife came from Canada?
Where she was an interpreter.
She was an interpreter?
Yeah, I admired her for that. She came over to interpret for the job.
For her job?
And when it came to it, I went up to McGill University in Canada generally.
Mm-hmm. Have you been with her in the USA?
Sure, apart from visa. So, yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
And when did you come to Germany first?
When I had a breakdown of the style that they couldn't cope with.
Where?
In Texas, where we lived.
In Texas?
I was in Texas with my wife. She came down from Canada, and it was very hard for me to tell her that I've already found someone else. And she would not really be the type of wife I would want. In hope that I would be a doctor. But all the same, she could develop herself in such a way that she could be a doctor's wife if she applied herself.
Yes.
Well, it all came up of its own. What happened was this: I was in my term time, and
in term for what?
yeah, it's very dry. I was in term time, and she came for the expo in 1968. And I went up to Canada where she was to be with her for the first time, say, away from Germany, of course, in almost forever. The first time ever we've been left alone.
When was that?
In 1968.
In 68. So after 3 years of marriage?
67 or 68, yeah. What happened was this. She was an au pair girl in England. And I'd met her. But she was very reserved. So yeah, what I say doesn't make a lot of sense. I speak very slowly. She was the au pair girl at a doctor's that I came to know. Anyway, and we went out together, and over the period she recognised I was not very well in these matters, essentially boy-girl relationships. I always had these hysterical attacks.
You had hysterical attacks?
Yes, all the time.
Why?
Well, that's for you to find out. Yeah, mainly, well, obviously, sexual problems, but...
Who made that diagnosis?
Well, I did. It was quite, I remember at a very young age talking to my mother and saying I had not growing up like the other boys or something. There was something wrong, something needed to be done about it.
You were different from the other boys?
In general, yes, and I had to do something, something wrong. We should seek medical advice to what could be done. And no doubt it referred back to the problems I told you a few hours ago about the testicle problems and that.
Yes, you told me about a testicle operation.
Right, I'm saying.
It must have been a threat to you.
Well, it's a matter between men or something. I do remember the time.
Can you remember that operation?
Not the operation itself, but the good treatment the doctors gave afterwards.
Yes.
If not the doctors themselves and their nurses, that to bolster the ego, you would call it, of a young man in 13 years of age. They did what they could that was in realms of good taste to accommodate me in these matters. They would wheel me into another ward or something and take letters and that. Sorry?
No, it is a little bit difficult to understand you.
Yeah, well, I'm easily affected by any form of medication.
Yes.
Even Dr. Story said the minimum dose was so much.
I did not give you a maximum dosage. But
I appreciate that, but I'm saying...
Does this situation remind you of the testicle operation? Then, of course, you must have had a narcosis.
Well, I had my nose refreshed. A few years ago, I was mugged by fine enough young women, and they got it for the fine art. I naturally defended myself, but unfortunately I had my nose broken.
You had your nose broken?
Yes, and they put it right very nicely.
Hmm?
That was done at the same clinic as Professor Priest.
This nose?
Yeah.
Your own?
It was done at the same clinic as Professor Priest.
Who did not see you?
Nobody sent one of his junior assistants to give me a test on whether I could identify colours or not. Anyway, I told him, I said, well...
But your nose is okay now?
Oh, fine. It's never had it so good.
Superior.
My nose is today what it should have been had I not had it broken in boxing over the years. It's very hard for me to talk because the injections knocked me back a bit. But of course that's what I come for. I'm very relaxed. Of course. Now what you want to know?
Now, I want to come back to the main problem. That in your childhood,
yes,
you had so many night terrors.
Yes. The reason that I was sent to boarding school was number one. Where's the mouth thing? It makes me very dry. I'm sorry to be a nuisance, but it's very dry to talk.
Do you want some water?
It's very good, doesn't it? Right. The reason that I was sent to boarding school was because I was a difficult child, mainly from the nightmares that disturbed my father's sleep.
It made him angry that you had nightmares?
Well, yes, because
Was he furious to you?
I put up with it, but night in, night out, the same old thing with no improvement made it difficult for him to.
And nobody could help you in that time with nightmares?
No. They're totally useless of what they thought was wrong. And being the kind of British behaviour, as you can imagine it to be.
So you must not speak about it.
Well, I've come here to speak about it.
But there must have been a reason, something you must have been afraid of.
I was always very frightened. I was frightened of my mother.
What?
Because when it came to my knowledge, I found out one way or the other. I used to listen at the door and that sort of thing. That she was fed up with me, and had intention to do away with me by a clever method of my uncle, which was to leave me with no clothes on, so I catch pneumonia.
You got pneumonia?
No, it was his idea that if she left me on a table in winter with no clothes on, I would catch pneumonia and with a bit of luck die.
You die. So that was the fantasy you had about it, or did you hear about it?
Well, I heard it because I used to listen through the door. I was well aware that my parents saw me as somewhat either a precocious child.
Yeah? Precocious?
Yeah, precocious, correct.
Yes. So,
or
in fact, you must
difficult.
In fact, you must have had the feeling that you were not welcome.
Well, welcome, but with reservations. The reservations were, for example, I'm told now, I've even spoken to the midwife who brought me into the world. The first reaction my mother was, did he have long fingers? Because she wanted me to be a concert pianist. She was very ambitious for a son, which was fine because she married my father, mainly because he was one good looking, typical for women.
Who could make a good son.
Yeah, make a successful son, and then she would bask in the reflected glory. You know, behind it all was the suffering mother, and she played that role very well. Bloody hell, what have you given me? What have you given me?
How do you feel now?
Knocked
Huh?
Knocked out.
Knocked out?
Yeah.
Why?
It's a test of drunkenness with the police. And you have to put two fingers together. I believe I couldn't do it now.
Do it now. Well, after 1 hour you do it very fine.
Yeah.
But it must have
I'm
been...
totally relaxed.
It must have been terrible for you, that feeling that they apparently wanted to kill you.
Well, my mother was always talking about suicides and things.
Your father?
My mother. I was mainly with my mother. She was highly intelligent woman. She was the powerhouse of the family. She drove my father on beyond the capabilities that he himself would have driven himself. Not that he didn't have the talent, but she was his motivation, as it were.
Yes, but so to say she was not satisfied with him.
Well, she was ambitious.
Very.
Yes, but realistically or something. She tells me, I remember that, bloody hell, what did you give me? At the age of 3, I used very long words. She said, don't look at me so severely, Mummy, and things like that. That for a 3-year-old child, in her estimation, the word severely was a long word. Was a very long word.
What age did you leave home?
Well, it was a bit awkward. My mother died of cancer of the stomach.
Your mother?
Yeah. When I was about 21, she finally died. But she was ill for many years, but I subconsciously perceived that she was going to die.
Yes.
And I even told my father that fact, at which he flew in a rage at 1 minute and burst into the tears at the next and said, you know these things? I said, yes. You can't hide from your own son deep matters of this nature. I can't tell you how I know. I can only tell you that I know.
But how many years she has been ill before she died?
About 3.
3. So when you were 18?
15, 16, that's right.
You knew already that
Yes.
she would die?
By looking at her face, yes.
Yes.
But it must be said to you as a psychiatrist, I was relieved when she finally did.
Yes, of course.
No, not of course.
But
She suffered a lot. I used to come home at night. No, in the daytime. I took time off work under various pretexts. I'm sorry I can't talk as well as I could when I spoke to you without the injection, but anyway, I'm well aware of the situation.
Okay. I can understand.
Okay. I was well aware of the situation, as it were. I know people like you don't believe in this, but divine revelation or something. You're well aware in deep matters of the soul, one soul knows another. Like I can understand my wife, even in her great blunders. I understand what she's thinking. Of all of my childhood, I could say my father did the right thing. No, he did the wrong thing, but he did it for the right reason.
What do you mean? What did he?
Oh, there you go. My father deeply loved his son, on one hand,
Yes.
but he was jealous
Of whom?
of his son,
Of his son.
for the simple reason that he himself came from very poor surroundings.
Yes.
And had
Poor childhood. Very poor childhood.
That's right. Well, hard childhood,
Very hard.
but wished for his son to have it better. Well, the problem was that when his son had it better and could advise him as a father would, a loving father would help his son, like in legal matters and that, that's right, do that a lot because I get very dry.
This is Glygen.
He on one hand, he pointed forward with one hand and held his son back in the other. In the upset, the fact he said his main mentality was, if I had had a public school education, well, I could be Prime Minister of Britain by now, sort of thing, because he was a highly talented man, but he had a soft spot in music. he was easily moved by music, as I am too. Doesn't matter how the situation is, I'm easily moved by the independent brilliance of good music. I could be made to cry, for instance, by certain records of Scheherazade, but it had to be that record played by l'Orchestre de la Suisse Romande. He played it, the certain things always had a clockwork effect on me.
Yes.
Irrespective of if I felt totally dead. I could have been discussing my uncle, I don't know if I told you, was a professor of physics. I could be expressing, so if I upset your smoking habits. He was a professor of physics, and we discussed many matters on physics. It was he at whose instigation I continued my studies in physics, or when I say continued, took them to a higher degree. My main speciality of thermodynamics.
You studied thermodynamics?
Yes. In fact, I could say that I applied the discipline of physics as enunciated by people like Max Planck and Helmholtz and Robert Julius Meyer, in applying them categorically to Meyer himself, and came up with certain decisions that he himself, of course, would have no recollection of. But it would have no meaning to you, but it was, sorry to shout you down, it would have, in effect, it was a continuation along a sort of a religiously straight path that led to Meyer's downfall in the end, as it were, because I predicted what he would do, irrespective of whether he believed it or what he himself would ever do. I remember, for example, in Meyer, saying I was 3 years with Meyer, and 2 or 3 months to the end of treatment, I said to a friend of mine who's from America, notwithstanding your disbelief, you have to remember me, Alastair, as you knew me over the years, doing your homework, taking laboratory, answering all the questions, filling in your exams and that.
Who said this?
No, me. I'm talking now to a friend of mine in America.
Yes.
I said, I believe in my dreams have proven that I fall in the hands of a ruthless criminal. But, notwithstanding that, I said that criminals are everywhere in the world. It's up to me to be able to show that I can cope even with people like this. This is a test for me or something. Anyway, my dreams, which come from a totally different world, showed me what Meyer would say and do at the last sitting. I dreamed 3 years to the day what would happen at the last sitting. And that's the reason I took the tape recordings, because I knew what he would say prior to him saying. It's like stepping from a film into the reality itself. And he actually did say it. But especially about the no witness business.
That's what you predicted.
Yes. Well, I don't predict. The soul in me recognised, yes. All the dreams I had at the beginning of treatment was that it's no doubt that psychoanalysis was discovered independent of myself. Not that I need worry about that, but that they were masters of psychoanalysis. Meyer himself removed some symptoms. I'm not denigrating that fact. But when you consider he treated me for 3 years and removed 1 symptom, it's pretty poor against the fact that I was treated by Dr. Marks, the general GP, a psychiatrist, who removed 3, or identified, better put, 3 psychological determinants within myself, 3 in 1 week, And that's what decided me not to go back to England, but to stay in Germany, the founding...
So you had to hope that in Germany they could help you more effectively.
Well, Germany was Germany, Austria, you know, German speak, shall we say, in Sprachgebrauch or Bereich, German Gebiet. Germany was more attuned to this kind of treatment. And also, see, I used to get letters from my parents telling me to come home.
Yes.
We don't want anything to do with Germans and stuff like that. They said to me, don't stay in Germany and that. And I said, no, I understand why they think, but I showed the letter to Dr. Marx, the very first psychiatrist I ever saw. He made the distinctive diagnosis between me having, as he said, being totally mad or just neurotic from understandable but painful emotional experiences. And there was a big difference. A lot could be done for the people like me. This is Dr. Marx, Dr. Wolfgang Marx, very good. And he himself wasn't a professor of this, but he was learning it. Yes. And anyway, one night he said to me, come to the clinic, same clinic as mine and so on. And he said he had Nachtdienst. And he said, lay down on the bed and just talk away. Well, I talked for something like 3 hours into exhaustion, but a lot of information came up in a very general way, especially the bit about a snake. I once saw a snake fall into a combine harvester and cut up. And I remember that memory came back to me as I lay on the bed then and talked to him in the Hamburg clinic. And it was that he suddenly said these ideas of Freud in a very offhand manner about the Kastrationsangst or something. I said, castration. I staggered back, you know, and so on. He said to me, yes, I believe you would be a good candidate of analysis. But because in 3 hours or whatever time it took for me to talk until I sort of went off into a sleep, which is what I near feel now, he said to me, that he wasn't competent to do the job. He didn't feel his English was good enough, and therefore he suggested I went back home. At that time I'd received a letter from home telling me to come home, but the only problem was that I'd be financially dependent on my parents. I said, yeah, that's typical of my father to get his little boy back into his own grip. I really would like to make a stand, especially...
Did you have the feeling that you had to free yourself from your father?
Oh, yes, of course. I was 23 years of age, my wife now diagnosed as pregnant. This was, in fact, a golden opportunity, we would say in English, to do something about it, as it were. Yes. So we stayed in Germany, and he had this Professor Meyer, whom I then saw, who did the Rorschach tests and so on and so forth. I have every reason to believe that Meyer was a very competent man. He himself is the opinion that he is. Meyer see himself as sort of God's gift to the psychoanalytic world, believe me. Well, you know him, so you know. And der vertritt viel der Auffassung, dass selbst ein sehr großer Analytiker ist. He sees himself as a sort of the new Freud of the world.
That's your interpretation of his behavior.
Oh no, he says so himself, that Freud made many mistakes. And I said, unfortunately, the mistakes that you make are the very mistakes that Freud says that you shouldn't make or gives advice to avoid. Lying to patients was done. I'm sorry to have to tell you these things because you're a great friend of his. But this is the fact. When I first started with Meyer, I said to him, I come here only to overcome the residual behaviour or mannerisms that I have. The childish mannerisms that I have now can be overthrown. albeit to some extent with great emotion, in the treatment. That's what I understand it, what it's about. Didn't need any pentothal or whatever, but unfortunately it may result in a certain amount of violence. But if you had a few black eyes because of me, in later years we would be able to understand that in a medical situation a doctor can put up with a bit of walloping or something if you understand where it comes from.
Yes.
It's not based on you personally. Like, I don't hate Professor Bastians. I have a poor opinion of him now than I did before because he waited 10 years to do the treatment. And these problems have burned in my stomach and around and that. And essentially, all I've done in 10 years is wait for you to treat me. I hate to admit it, but that's all I've done. I've been waiting for your call. For 10 years I've taken jobs so that if you phoned up and said, yes, come next week or something, of course I'm well aware that you're in private difficulties yourself due to the academic situations you now find yourself to be in. But I said I sympathise with that, but it's a matter of your own situation. Yes, I see the world to have lost in me a competent analyst who spoke English and German, was married in Germany, has children in Germany, who put himself out specifically to overcome the sociological problems that the English have with the Germans naturally. And I think you've made a mess that the world would suffer from, irrespective of me, of course. That you've made a mess of the situation that needs not to happen. Because that's the important thing. None of these problems that have come to pass between me and Ma need to have ever happened, so long as he stay within the analytical and scientific approach to the treatment. Albeit, you must remember he only ever saw me 2 times in 1 month before the Big Bang Day. I said to him, all I need is a short, sharp treatment, say 6 months, because the reason for that being that in 6 months I have to take my place in McGill University. I've only got 6 months sort of holiday or sabbatical leave, whatever you want to say, to get myself back into fighting fit condition to continue my university education. But with a bit of hard work on your part and putting up with someone like me on your part as well, perhaps, it would be worth it. I thought I had something to offer. I have a degree and so on like that. I have quite some understanding of physics. If you don't believe, I haven't brought them with me because I don't want to be a burden on you, but I have very good references from the academic standpoint from the University of Baylor that I studied in America. So far as it went, up to my wedding, my academic standing was good.
Yes, and how far did you come with your academic training?
Well, I was about 2 courses away from a BSc. I think I had to have chemistry, advanced chemistry, physical chemistry, and 1 or 2 other things like that. I didn't have a great understanding of calculus, but I was spending my time to make sure that I overcame it. In most courses you'll find you'll have 1 or 2 people who know what they need to know and learn about it themselves, and I was friends with them.
What effect has been your ideal to become?
Well, really I wanted to do physics, really, but with medicine. Like, say, I know it sounds very naive now, but cobalt treatment for cancer and things like this, that would be the man to do the job.
Yes.
You'd have to have a degree of...
When did you come to that intention, that ideal? When your mother died from cancer?
Well, but one thing came to another, it sort of pinpointed it. The physics department, and when I was at school in Ardingly College, said he's a funny fellow, but he's got the brains to do the job. For example, just to give an example, I would come in late, and they'd say, there's the exam today. And I said, oh, is there? And sit right down and do the exam in about 3/4 of an hour and walk out or something. And say, well, I'm going back to guitar practice or whatever. Sorry? Sorry.
Well, I said something to...
Yeah, your friend.
Yes.
I want to change the tape or something.
No.
No, okay.
No.
It's a C90 anyway.
But...
However...
May I ask you now what...
Yes, of course.
Because you are talking and talking and talking.
I'm very good at that.
It is very difficult me to interview. May I ask you again, do you have any idea where these hysterical attacks, as you called it, came from?
Well...
At which moment did you get such an attack?
What, the last one first, do you? Or what? You ask me the questions, I'll answer them.
Yes.
The last one came, well, mainly, I started to have the... Yeah, what happened with Maya, I started to get regress on my own. I started to go, I've actually been back to my own birth and tried to relive it in a toilet in Hamburg in midwinter. Trying to squeeze through a little small opening by the back of the toilet. There was sort of S-bend. And I just tried to bring in my mind. It's very hard.
Must have been a strong wish, eh?
Well,
to come down to us again.
It happens on its own from the body point of view. Somatically, the body goes into convulsions.
Yes.
Someone like Maya seems to be, he just sits in the chair and smokes his cigarettes, seems either oblivious, he's seen this day in, day out, or he's out of his depth in this matter, and I was never sure which it was. I remember I used to go home from my wife and I said, oh well, it's a classic case, it can't be too difficult. The pains in my heart and in my legs, I used to be not able to walk and that. I said all these hysterical symptoms.
Yes.
He sees this every day. It's nothing to him. It's just a regular case, number 1 or 2 or something.
Perhaps.
But I used to have crying fits that last for about 2 hours, which is quite a long time. Then I doze off into sleep and wake up with pains in my arms that disappeared by magic.
May I tell you something?
Yeah.
All these hysterical symptoms
Come from emotion.
are based, huh? Are based on a cry for help, which never could be expressed normally.
Fair enough, I would agree with you. But what happens when I got married? You see, you take a new rule in your life. I said to my wife, bad as it is, and 23 years of age, and everything you look to me to be, that in fact I might possibly be able to become, but at the moment I'm not, is re-emerging of its own by nature, as it were, and all we can do is go through them as quick as we can, or as best as we can. It was a miracle to notice the body only threw up into the mind what it could digest at one time. See, I was 18 months ill before I even met Maya. By the time I got to see Professor Maya, I'd had all these problems for about 18 months beforehand.
Why did it last so long before you could see him?
Well, because I was in America, and by the time I come to the decision it's hysterical phenomena. By the time we came back in the boat and finally go from one doctor to another and you finally get to the clinic, it takes this time.
Yes, but now I must come down to that basic point. Why did this attack start in the course of your marriage? Because at the beginning you were in good condition, isn't it?
No, not at all.
No?
No, this is a mistake that you've not understood. I tried to kill my wife, you see. That's how we knew about it. Oh, yeah. I used to throttle her in sleep or something. She was full of bruises. And I maintained that she was having intercourse with the guy next door because he was one of these sort of American handsome men. And I went round the back and said, yeah, I told you so after that.
Gary, and I was like, I told you about it, man. I was dancing with 2 beautiful girls there.
But that's what they took me to a psychiatrist for. I started accusing people of doing things. Can I have a cup of coffee? I suppose not. Anyway, I'm very thirsty, I tell you. Sorry.
don't do it.
Okay. Yeah, I that was what they decided in the end, that I needed this treatment, or I was, in terrible pain.
Yes, but why were you so angry on your wife?
Yes, they said at the time, well, there are two reasons. Number one, I don't really think I wanted to get married at that time. Two, I had doubts whether she was the right kind of person that I should marry. But the situation, she was in Expo in Canada as an interpreter in 1968, and I went up in the summer recess to see her, and we lived together and all that, and so on. So when I came back to Texas, I started having terrible headaches. I thought, well, it really was time at 23 to get married, and I've been writing to her for, say, 3 years or something. I had to make a decision, but it was my opinion that she really wasn't the right type of person for me.
Yes.
And I had an American girlfriend and so on. Like, there was a bit of a funny bit.
Why did you not come to the conclusion before the marriage that she was?
Well, I did. But the people with whom I was friendly, like teachers and anyway, she wanted to come down, but she wanted me to make the decision. So I said, well, I'll come down anyway. And we had all sorts of visa problems. I had to sign a lot of papers to her to come from Canada to America, being German. And she only had so much time. I essentially say to her, here's some money, go back to Canada and go back to Germany. I don't want to marry you. I found someone better or different. Or get married. She was 24 or 23 or whatever, and she came to get married. And it was very hard for me to say, well, I've changed my mind, I've got someone else or something.
You gave in the end.
Well, you want to put it that way, but I'm saying, for example, at those days the pill was becoming popular and everybody was having a good time, as it were, and the university wanted to point us to a good example. Yes, you see, the Europeans, they get married, they do the good thing or something. So I was, all the problems that I foresaw would happen were ameliorated, or money and all other matters. They said, oh, well, you'll see, you'll cope all right with them. Most of your problems are purely in the mind. And you'll find that when you actually get married, it's just nerves, essentially, of taking the big step of getting married and later on becoming a father. We understand. I'm talking about, I used to talk to my chemistry teacher and that, and so on like that. I will say this for the Yanks, they kept a good tabs. I was a physics lab teacher or something, and when I became so ill that I had to give up teaching and talking, they sent me to a psychiatrist, sorry about this, who used to work, who was a student of the university.
Have some idea where the urge comes from to talk so fast, to talk so continuously? Is there a fear that the environment, the people, and the key figures?
Listen, friend, I waited 10 years to have a word with you in confidence. Now that you've given me loads of rubbish, I have to make use of it. You can understand that, right? Okay, fair enough. Okay, so the point still remains. I'm just a relaxed situation. I'm not saying anything I wouldn't say normally, except that I'm just in a relaxed situation. That's all. What was I saying? Oh yes, at the time, it's important that you know the facts of the situation before anything else, because against this, see, Maya rushed over these facts, but they're quite important. You saw very well, like courts would say, well, you allowed yourself to be talked into it. I was 23 years of age, I got a scholarship, there was no real reason why I shouldn't get married. My father came over, for example, and told me not to marry a German and so on like this. I said to my wife, don't worry, once a little grandchild has come along, sitting on his knee and that, pulling his hair and that, what's left of it, he changed his mind. It was my opinion that by doing so I'd taken a personal step in the sort of...
In the beginning he did not accept the German element in the family.
Well, he didn't want anything to do with it, no. He tried to talk me out of it. He came over. He used to live in the Bahamas, and he came over some... Well, I'd been Christmas there. I think I got married in, say, September. But anyway, the point of that year, we talked a lot in the Bahamas, and I came back and finished some of my studies and so on like that. Well, he was a little bit against it. Mind you, now they're great friends. My wife's just had a great holiday over there this year. They get on very well together, but mainly because they both suffered someone like me or something. They're united now in having to put up with someone like me. As it were. My wife had to put up with me for 10 years. My father had to put up with his son. You know, it's become a talking point now. They got on well together, but it's fine. Unfortunately, I'm afraid my wife was not the type of person I needed, and I foresaw that. When I got to Germany, I said, look, I don't believe Maya is the man. She said, oh, you see something wrong with everybody. I said, listen, these very deep things would only be understood by a certain type of person. I do not believe Maya is the man. There's certain reactions he comes up with that I automatically close up at. I said it would be better if I went home. And she said, no, you're just running away from the problems that would come anyway in the treatment. And that's resistance. So I accepted that this in fact was the case, since head professor Adolf Meyer, who speaks perfect English, studied under Jung, you couldn't have better than that or something. You were only going to a third-rate doctor in England. You might as well stay here. You've got your home here, your daughter and others. I was using this excuse then to say, because my wife was pregnant at the time now, I'm jumping around in time, I meant, to run away or something. I'd been running away all my life, and I was doing the same now. It was time to stay and make a stand, and a man like Meyer, if he didn't know what he was doing, no one did. He was head professor. And there was no realistic reason. And the reason that I foresaw that the treatment would go wrong were what would be described in English as highly nebulous. Only his only reaction to certain things I said and that sort of thing, where he banged on the table and that, lost his temper at the wrong things, or was somewhat, I would say, unscientific in his approach.
Did you feel jealous when your wife got pregnant?
No, just annoyed that she couldn't wait a few years. I took her to a lady that we knew very well. We bought the wedding dress, and I said, now look, in Germany they may have Organ or whatever, various contraceptive things. I said, in America they would go by a different name, but I said, please be free to speak to Mrs. Bull. We know her for many years, and get any information you need.
But your wife did not want an abortion.
Well, she did, but I didn't, because of the quality of doctors. Having seen the results, I said, no, 100 years ago, these options wouldn't be open to us anyway, and we might as well we would cope. We came from the class of people that would cope. For example, when Maya said that I had tendencies to homosexuality, I told my wife that. She said, well, what did he say? So I said, well, he says I have mannerisms of homosexuality. I keep doing that to my hair or something, and these indicate in a deep way that I have these. I said, in view of everything that happened at boarding school and that, I said, it would be a sad thing that even I, who fought against it so badly, I used to run away from school and get in fights and that, still have been caught on this. There was nothing I could do about it, but at least I'm in the right situation with a man of the calibre of Professor Meyer to overthrow these problems. And since if I became a doctor myself, indeed, as Meyer said, perhaps a practicing psychotherapist, I would expect others to make the effort to overcome their problems. It would be weak if I couldn't myself have done the same or something, faced with the same dilemma, to show the way, very British in that respect.
Did you ever had homosexual contact?
Oh, at school, yes, they're forced on you. The teachers and that.
So, teachers who did it with the...
Oh, well, it's done in such a way that that's right.
That is not proof of homosexuality. If teachers do that with...
No, there may in fact be inherent in me certain tendencies towards that. That's what they tell me. That's what I said to the first doctor. He said to me, I believe you're somewhat homosexual. And I said to him, listen, if all the things, if I was, I would know about this. And he said, well, that's what you think. I said, well, I feel in a very sincere way, I would know. And he said to me, well, you might be surprised to learn that certain people fight this off, and you are the type to do that. Because apparently he said to me, oh yes, I remember when he first told me, he said, I think you have Neigung nach Homosexualität or something, you know, in pidgin German. He didn't speak very good English. It's the very first doctor I saw. I flew in a rage. I said to him, listen, I've not come here to be insulted by some kraut doctor, and I've got a filthy temper. And he said, I see you emotionally explode at such a remark, where if it was true, you would just laugh it off. I said, yes, I see you're right there. He said, yes, that's a defensive reaction.
Yes.
Like he said, I was depressive, and I said, oh, I'm a friend of everybody. Ask me, he said, that's what you like to give the world to believe. But we find that depression comes from hate, and apparently the moment he said that, I said, oh, but I don't hate anybody, and I went all red in the face. He said, go and look in the mirror. That's a very good psychosomatic symbol that confirms what I believe. You can't hide that. You were embarrassed. And the moment he said that, my mind spun back. I think I might have even fainted or felt very weak. And when I went home, hundreds of dreams started to pervade my mind of concepts that, yes, I did hate this and hate that and so on like that, but I put up with it or something like that. Yes, mainly my school. I put up with my school because my parents paid a lot of money and they wanted me to go there.
But may I ask you something?
Of course.
Yes?
Yes, of course. So I'm talking because I feel the drug has made me
I
a little...
may say to people, you are homosexual. Everybody, every man, every woman has his male and female aspects. Masculine, feminine.
Yes, but in my...
The matter is, have you ever been actively in search for a homosexual contact?
No, but unconsciously he says to me, I might well have been that way.
Yes.
And I was so staggered by the results of what he said, and fainted or something, or fell in the rage, and then fell back faint. He said that was a reaction that proved it, in fact, unconsciously, could well be true. In other words, it was a fact against which I talked and fought all my life. In other words, he may well have been right. Whatever it is, the changes that have happened to me in the last, so many years have been to crush it ruthlessly.
Yes, but still you must have felt hurt when he said it to you.
Well, I felt staggered. Funny enough, when you say hurt, no, I was amazed. I said something like, yeah, you can't afford the bloody Germans, or something like that. Very clever, because it was something if I did hide it, and I obviously did, there may be an element of truth in it, and he, irrespective of the great blanket of behaviour that covered it, had sussed it out. I admired him for that. And a lot of dreams came up that confirmed that in fact there may be an element of truth in this that I'd run away from all my life.
Yes, but listen, it's always a matter of what is behind it. Is it not a longing somewhere for tenderness and contact?
Well, you will be right, no doubt, but it may be more than that, I don't know.
And
well, maybe.
As a boy, have you contact with your father, with your mother?
Yes, I told you before, my father was a very motherly father.
You told me.
Yeah, that's what.
So he had his feminine aspects too.
Well, he was much like he liked music, for example. My mother liked music, but she was unmusical. My father played the violin a bit. Yeah. Yes, I had a high regard for my father. There's no doubt about that. Sorry. Yeah. I had a great regard for I looked very much up to my father. It was somewhat of a disappointment when I found, for example, he was something of a coward. In fact, a big disappointment. It happened in the Bahamas. It happened with Maya. I said to him, I want you to go, he rowed. For example, with Maya, he came over one time and wanted to speak to Professor Maya. So I said to him, I'll take you to the clinic and personally introduce you to him. He said, no, I find my own way there. I said, well, it's not necessary. I know him for 3 years at my expense. I said, I'll introduce you to him. It's the least I can do. It's a social introduction. And at the moment they got to the clinic, he became the same old father he was. No, I can cope or something. And it annoyed me a bit. In 60 years, my father is exactly the same person he was at 26. No improvement.
At the moment, he is still the same?
Yes, my father will live and die the same person he's always been. He has never matured in certain respects.
He is still living in the island, General?
Jersey, yeah, that's right. Yes, he's married again and so on. Everything's all right. He's got it.
2 days ago, he wrote me a letter.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. It's always. My sister told me he's secretly in contact with you or something. She says.
The only thing he wrote to me is that he could not pay for the treatment.
Yeah, well, he's always right. He's a businessman, you see. And he says, we have spent so much fucking money on bloody doctors that do no good and promise this and have all smart aleck answers. Oh, yes, well, we don't practice that kind of treatment, or we're analytical psychotherapists, or this, that and the other. They've always got a brilliant answer for why they don't produce the results. And I was so annoyed with Meyer because if he did nothing but just listen to me, I'd cure myself in front of him. Almost. I'll agree on that. Not entirely. He had to fulfill missing links. He did one time in 3 years, but it's not a lot when you consider. He said about the swellings in my stomach and the blood coming out of my backside was as an attempt to give birth. He said, yes, you're trying to have a child from your father. I said to him, bloody hell, I've taken this stuff so far, but it frightened me because of the power of the biological influence that lie deep inside you is in fact very powerful. I mean, I had terrible swellings, and the blood is real. I said to my wife, my God, I'm having convulsions now. He said, yes, you're trying to give birth to a baby from your father. I said, you're taking this stuff too far. I said, my God. Anyway, within seconds, the symptoms just disappeared. I said to him, here, that's very clever.
To a certain extent, he was right.
Well, it must be, because the symptoms disappear. You normally find that if you're about to come to the unearthing of a hysterical primal situation or whatever, when you dig all the way down and you're just about to come to the real crux of the matter, you find the symptoms flame up terribly to resist off, or they disappear.
What you are expressing is this constant cry for help and understanding.
Yes, but by people who really do know and really do understand what they're talking about. I was led to believe someone of the calibre of Professor Meyer was that man, and I believed him to be so until I had conclusive evidence that this was not the case. I would do this the same with you and everybody else. Unfortunately, you don't see me like Meyer did. My wife said, I don't know why Meyer tried to fiddle ass around with you when he could have just sent you down the road to Bastian's, who specialises in these cathartic explosive treatments. We never understand that, and he has never explained it, and therefore we hold Professor Meyer in low esteem. For example, he's never ever written or ever answered any of the letters I've written. Some of them have been painstakingly written. I haven't just sent the first one that came off the pen, as it were, and we feel this somewhat poor, even via the lawyer. I mean, we've been to see him a couple of times with the lawyer, and he said, he made a mistake and all this. I said to him, yeah, but I told him at the time I didn't come from mistakes, and so long as you follow the rule of treatment, no mistake will actually happen. It's a miracle to some extent. The patient will only reproduce the most important aspects of his psychological development. He can do no other. He's compelled to go back. It's a very frightening feeling, I tell you. I've been all the way back there to the very youngest years. It's about like seeing two films. You're well aware that the outside world, there's microphones in front of you or whatever, but superimposed in that or on that, you rehear again old problems and that, and the emotions come with them. I've cried for hours, and I just say, just let me cry, and it comes back of its own, as it was.
May I connect?
Sorry. I'm just talking very generally, you understand.
Yes.
I'm full of anger, you understand that, you know that.
Oh, yes, that's very clear.
What do you mean very clear? It isn't yet, but it would be if treatment got that way.
the way you express your thoughts.
Oh, it's nothing yet. I mean.
Express is also.
Well, I'm an aggressive type of person, but I mean.
Yes.
All right, go on.
Well,
I'm raged at Maya. I see Maya's treatment as an outrage against humanity. You know that.
I think he could not cope with you.
Yes, I told him at the time. I said, "Listen, let's not make this a battle of egos. If in the whole clinic of Hamburg, there's no one who could take this kind of case, I'm a bit frightened because it was exactly cases like mine that Freud started with. So if today's world, say 80 years after the death of Freud, we can't even do what he did, we're going backwards, not forwards, with all the vast sums of money we spent on it."
Read Freud writings?
No, not to begin with. He told me not to read anything by Freud. It made it didn't help me.
Do?
After the treatment, I did, yes. And
Did you recognize yourself in what?
absolutely, all of the cases. I said, if you mix them a lot together, I've got a bit of this and a bit of that. We read it with my wife. I said, all he had to do was follow the golden 10 commandments of Freud, and that was it. But he fucked it up the last moment. No, that's right. I can't forgive him for it. I'm sorry. He ruined my career. I'm sorry. I mean, I may not have been a great doctor or something, but they see, for example, the Americans said to me, "It's quite clear you've got problems, but you yourself understand that you have problems," which is a good point, because if you come euphoric, we have to hospitalise you. The moment they said that, I went round to one of my doctor friends. He said, "No," he said, "don't want to get in a mental asylum." He said, "You never get out." He said, "Your parents have to pay a fortune. The best thing you can do is piss off out of this country. I'll give you some Libriums. I want your word of honour that if I give you 200, you just don't take them. Just get out of this country as quick as you can." And I said, "That's fine." He said, "Go back to England or Europe," or I said, "Get out of this country." I tell you, he said, "I've never seen anybody get well on this Veterans Administration or psychiatry." He said, "Get out of it. Stay away."
Answer me
Good
one
man.
question.
Sorry.
When you had the feeling Professor Meyer did not understand you,
That was after 6 weeks of the beginning of treatment.
why didn't you go to an hospital?
Oh, I did. I wrote home. I've corresponded with other doctors because they all send me back to Meyer. They say, "Yes, Dr. Meyer's the best doctor there is. Of course he knows what he's doing." That's the thing. And Professor Meyer believes he's right. He believes he's permanently right. Whatever, wonderful doctor, horrible patient. And that's the problem. I'm unfortunately in the position I believe I've unearthed in 3 years why Meyer is a psychiatrist, what it benefits from him, and so on like that. I discussed it a little bit with the lawyer. He didn't want to know too much about it, but there's nothing I can do about it. The terrible truth is that psychiatry today offers something it didn't in Freud's day. Freud discovered it first-hand and single-handed, and therefore didn't know what he was going on about. He staggered like across the desert with his own homemade compass. But now we know it's all about sexual matters and all the other matters that come with it. That today's doctors know what was coming to them, and so on like that. Meyer's a tiny little man. Like, for example, when I started just crying, I started to put on weight with the same amount of food. I was me sort of about 13 stone, very British, and the way I looked at that time, with a full head of hair. Oh, Meyer said, "My God, we don't want people like this around." You could see he was very frightened. Meyer was frightened of me, and I said to him, if a man who knows what he's doing needn't be, because he knows. The very word of flicking his fingers, that terrific aggression could be crushed or redirected in another way. I don't know if Meyer's supposed to be listening to this tape later, but the point still remains. I did try and tell him in the very beginning that I thought there was a misunderstanding between us, and it turned out that there was.
When you were with him, did you talk also so rapidly and so continuously?
Oh, much more so, because I have the drugs to slow me down. I agree, it's very hard. And for example, when he only saw me, he said, I was annoyed. He only saw me twice in 1 month, and the way I'm talking now went on for 24 hours. The moment I dream, I just go straight into the dream world, and that mentality continue, as it were, at that pace. I was sweating away and so on like this. Anyway, I said to him, I needed a short, sharp treatment, possibly hospitalised for the last 2 weeks when the traumatic experiences re-emerge with all the anger and the emotions. I might well have to be tied down. I said, in fact, it's good that I was. What was important was that you didn't sort of get out of a cane and start beating me and blaming me for being ill. But he was pointed to talk to Myra. He didn't listen to anything. He just looked out the window, smoked his cigarettes and went, yes, yes, yes. And that's all he said. I was quite clear that he really didn't understand what I was saying. I said to him at the time I should go back home. That's why I wrote to Dr. Bowlby and some of the others. I tried to make alternate arrangements.
Have you ever been with Dr. Bowlby?
No. I wrote to as many people as I could. Ambrose was another one. He studied under a man called J.A. Hadfield. You might have known him. He was very competent. He does this kind of treatment with drugs and that. I said, all I wanted to do was go home. But my wife, you see, was against it. She said, oh, you're just running away, leaving me here with a bloody great baby, and you'll never come back, and all this type of thing. And I said to my wife, it shows what kind of marriage we have if you believe that already. I just said, I believe that the treatment with Maya will not be a success, and it's important for us, husband and wife, that it is a success. So I said, let me be the guide. It's my life in my hands, as I understand it. So I said, let me try and do something, save the situation before it sinks. And she said, no, that's just resistance manifesting itself with very clever intellectual arguments, which I'm supposed to be a master of. And I said, you could well be right, but according to my dreams, I believe there is something wrong with this man. And I even told Maya that I didn't think the treatment would be successful. And he said something. So he said, oh yes, you don't like the treatment. I said, well, you don't like what we do. I said, well, patients never like the treatment because it's painful for them. I said, that can't be avoided. That's immaterial. I said, I think there's a misunderstanding between us, probably due to the different mentality of the English and the British or the Germans.
Listen
sorry.
to me.
Yeah, I am. Sorry.
If possible, listen to me.
Of course.
Of course, you felt terribly rejected by Professor.
Well, I felt frightened. I felt Maya was on the wrong track, like two trains. He was on the circle line, and I was on the other line.
Maybe so, but the feeling of rejection must have been very basic in your whole development.
It was fear. If he factored this treatment up, my career would be ruined, and that was that.
So.
No, forget the rejection. You're worried about the psychological problems that developed between me and Maya. There weren't any. He sees transference everywhere. There wasn't any transference. The problem was the first bit of transference that would ever have happened would be at the time of the Big Bang. I distrusted Maya. I don't like him. He's arrogant and so on like that. But because he's the only doctor I've got, and because I have to make the best of the situation at 23, I had to make something like this. I said, well, he's the only one you're going to get. He's the head professor. You won't get anything better than in England. If you get that good, you'll be lucky. So I said, you'll have to make the best of what you've got and try and bring up as much material as you can and work it through with him and adjust your personality a bit to fit in with him so that he doesn't get up and wallop you one or terminate the treatment. That's all I had to do. But when the Big Bang came, I said this was a golden opportunity for him to get first-hand unconscious material into the open world. And he bloody well made a mess of it, and I can't forgive him for it. I'm afraid to have to say that for you, that's right. The only thing I gave him the best thing he could ever need, and by an unbelievable piece of stupidity on his own part, though I understand where it came from in my own opinion, he made a mess of it. And that's it. After that, I became violent towards him. I said, listen, friend, at least if you don't like me, which is quite clear you don't, I mean, his face used to visibly fall. When he saw it was me, he used to have sort of ladies with mink coats, and apparently he specialises in lesbians or something. Anyway, when he saw it was me in my dirty old jeans and unwashed hair, his face used to fall. He said, oh yes, well, come. He couldn't hide how much he didn't like me. I said to him, look, if you don't like me, say so, and I'll go home. No, he said, no. I gave every opportunity and tried every wrangle I could think of for him to say, yes, well, perhaps you should be passed on to a different type of doctor. Of course, in those days, I didn't know about yourself and this type of treatment. Had I had at 23 the treatment that I presume you gave, then I think things would have been different. But it's, that's the situation. And my wife, I saw my wife some years ago, she said, why Maya try to fiddle ass around with a treatment when he knows someone of your calibre, or that you specialise in this kind of explosive treatment, and he was well aware that that's what I felt it to be, why he didn't send me there. We never understand that. I'm the very explosive type of, I'm going to chop the fucking head off that wanker, it's the last thing I do type of attitude. That's very much characteristic of me, and it remains that way and will continue to do so.
Yes, but do you understand where this explosiveness comes from?
Yeah, anger and hatred.
Yes.
But it does.
Where in your life did it start?
Well, almost to the very years of very beginning, probably at birth, because apparently.
What I mean.
Oh, I see.
From the starting point.
Yeah, I got off to a bad start, you might say.
You wanted a rebirth.
Well, apparently, this turns out to be the case because of what happened. But Maya didn't seem to see that was part of it. But I'm told now Yanov specialises in this. But in the old days, they used to do this with spiritual rebirth. The church did that. I've seen this happen, the driving out of the devil. When I was 11, I stayed with some cousins. My mother was somewhat French. Her father was French, Italian, and I've seen this done. And I remember at the time when I saw it, I said, this man at 22 or whatever, and they held him, he screamed, they hold up the sign of the cross, and he jumps in his mind to it. And I said, where he stands then, now, you two at whatever, will also, it's a ritual that you will have to undergo as well, spiritual rebirth. I see, the biological foundation is understood to me, I understand it, but the fact still remains you can't avoid it by psychiatry.
The miraculous thing is that in
I've seen it done to others, you see.
UK, rebirthing was done for many years.
Yes. I don't know why they stopped. We've got too much bloody academics now. I agree it's a dangerous situation in as much the patient's in a terrible state, and if you make a mistake you might fall back dead on the ground or spasms. I'll agree on that. You've got to know what you're doing. But any priest who's competent in the matter would know that. Oh.
But still, there must have been a very intensive longing for getting that feeling of being accepted.
Well, there's no doubt an element of truth. I saw him, in perhaps no doubt, I took the academic approach in as much as if I...
As a young boy, you had that feeling that they wanted to kill you.
Well, I found that out, that they had done so, yes, but that I was alive, that proved that they hadn't been successful or something. Yeah, I told all this to Maya anyway. Yeah, my uncle was very sort of cool, calm. He had one of these vasectomies or something, which in 1925 was well, wouldn't say unheard of, but a very rare thing. He was the professor of physics one. He didn't want any children, all this type of thing. He was a very academic type of person. He was the one who suggested they just left me out on the table, opened all the windows in the winter, and I would die of pneumonia. No one would know, and that was that. And I overheard them discussing it at the door. I used to listen a lot at the door to my parents. Well, yeah, but I was, well, possibly, but I mean, I felt myself to be on top of the situation since I was listening to what was going on. For example, there's a story that was told of Hansel and Gretel, that the children knew what the parents had in mind or something and how to go about it. I always liked stories where the children got the better of the parents even if they knew what was happening. I've analysed most of the stories that I liked as childhood to be that kind of thing, that I outwitted the outwit, and no doubt Maya would see in the analysis that he had with me that I just repeated the same thing. Unfortunately, that's what he sees it to be. See, Maya sees himself as a wonderful analyst.
Well, I've never seen how he worked.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying to you. You will believe what he tells you.
I know him from conferences.
Yes, but you would never have been a patient of his, and therefore it's hard for you to visualise or accept that I would make derogatory statements about one of your best and esteemed colleagues. And this is what I said to this Dr. Turner. I said, the terrible piece of truth in my one case has fallen true. I said to him, I feel like Mrs. Crippen, who finally, because she studied chemistry, saved her own life. And because she didn't die, they say, oh, there's no proof, you see, and this type of thing. My fear of doctors, unfortunately, has become very big. But the fact that I'm here today shows to a certain extent that I obviously don't fear you as much as I did the others. Or it must be mentioned that if anything ever happened to me, the punishment and retribution that can be now given to you would be something quite big. See, in 10 years I've been quite busy to make sure I've got people behind me. As I said something like this to my wife at the time, I said in 10 years' time, Maya will be, say, 60. All my friends from university and young people that I know will be the up-and-coming professors. I said it would be up to us to be able to manipulate situations and so on like that. I'm afraid my desire to get back at Maya for running away at the very moment of importance is still with me. It will never go. I'm surprised you didn't bring him here, because but anyway, I'm afraid that is the first thing we have to abreact with me in aggression, is Maya letting me down at the very moment when he had nothing to lose. Even the lawyer saw that. I was the one who put my head on the block. I said, yes, a time will come. I'm in such a terrible state of anxiety that when I walk into your room, I can tell you, schwarz auf weiß, ohne Ausrede, where the guilty conscience comes from. And he said, oh, that's too over the grown. And I was very frightened. I said, well, that's what you want. It's part of treatment. It may not be the whole treatment. See, according to Maya, he thinks it would be a one-shot deal and never to reoccur. To me, it was just taking the cork off the bottled unconscious, and many other sessions would come, equally explosive, but I had no foreknowledge in advance what I would say before I said it. The reason is because I would never tell him. These were private secrets to be revealed to the doctor that I would never tell him if I knew them before. I remember at the time, the very time I went to the clinic actually, and said, no, I followed, I went to the clinic, said he's misunderstood this, I knew he had, I told him he had, and so on like this. I should take the time by force. And I said no, that the intellectual part of me, the medically trained part of me said something like this, a man of the calibre of Professor Maya would know, the moment you used force and burst in, kicked out a patient he got, he would have to stop treatment. That he wasn't the sole control of it, that if you were going to throw it off with force, the treatment had no chance of success from the psychodynamic point of view. I said he would understand that. I believe he would have done. It would be the end of treatment. And if I was deceived in my own self, which to a certain extent I must be, then it would come up in another way. But it never did. I'm afraid to say it never did. I became very frightened of Maya after that. That he couldn't take half an hour at the right time to prove himself right, one way or the other. He could only be right. If I walked into his office, right, if I walked in here in a terrible state of fear and said, yes, I had wanted to kill my father and I had desired my mother or sister or something, and even I, Alistair Stanley, am caught on the complexes that humanity is caught on, and I can't argue my way out. Yes, I'm as bad as the rest of the world or something like this. To admit that kind of thing, that would be the humiliation to someone of a vast ego that I'm seen to be. So, that would be a winning point for the doctor. He said, there you are, you see. You try and tell the world different, but you don't fool me. If I couldn't tell him, he said, well, look at the time. I'm making special time for you. What is it? And I couldn't tell him. He'd say to me, well, what did I tell you? It's an illusion. You feel that way. I'll agree you do. But when it comes to the reality, you are deceived. I would then fall in the case of fear and say, yes, I did feel this way. That's why I'm here. He knows best. So therefore my belief in him would go up, which I needed that at the time.
May I ask you?
Yes.
Can you ever relax?
Sorry?
Can you ever relax?
Oh, I'm always relaxed. I enjoy like this.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it does me good to talk out.
Yeah, that's quite evident.
Oh, I relax playing music. I love playing music.
What instrument do you play?
The zither. I got something good out of Germany in the end. I'm trying this Harry Lime theme to play this
one.
one.
How were your contact with other patients in the department of Professor Maya?
I never saw anybody.
No? Or you came there only for...
Ambulance. Oh yes, that's right. I think that was wise in that case.
You've never been admitted to his department?
Well, I was never hospitalised by force, no. See, we disagreed on everything, essentially. I said I wanted a 6-week or say 6 months intensive treatment, that when it finally got back to the emotions started bubbling out, instead of being sick, I would have to be hospitalised for the best interests of myself and the world at large. And I prepared my wife for this eventuality. He said, no, it takes 3 years. I said, fucking hell, 3 years! I don't want to spend 3 years in bloody Germany. I can't afford it for a start. And 2, because I had to go back to McGill to finish my degree and so on like that. And I have a letter saying that that I couldn't enter the university until I got rid of the problems. I still have these letters, by the way. You see that I told them I couldn't. I didn't come up straight away because I've been a bit unwell on getting married. This was not an unusual situation, and if I did become a physician, it was in my best interest, that I needed psychoanalysis to undergo the treatment, 1, from the point of view of getting well, like anybody, but 2, to be converted to the reality of the psychoanalytic methods of treatment. To be converted to the analytical methods of treatment by personal experience. Yes, I had terrible pains in my stomach, and yes, when he leaned forward and said, yes, this is it did work. Because if you read books about it, it's hard to believe. That's what this doctor, the first doctor who saw me was a very nice man. What really converted me to stay in Germany was not so much what they told me, but the way he behaved. For example, when the very first doctor I saw, Dr. Marx, he said he was learning this, and then I came one night to the Krankenhaus where he was, and I lay down on the bed there, and we just talked. And after about 3 hours, after about 3 hours, I said, I was talking away like I am now, no objection though, but I said, he must have gone to sleep, or that he doesn't understand enough English, and the way I speak so quickly, he hasn't understood it. And I turned round and looked at him, and he was white as a ghost, looking down like this, and I said to myself, he's out of his depth in this. And the next time I saw him, he said, I great believe that you are a good patient for this, but he said, I feel myself to be not competent to handle it, and I don't want to make a mistake. I said, that's exactly what I felt of the case, but I admired him. Normally, a German, especially the way we think of them, say, we're trying the old foreigner, if it doesn't work, we kick him out with the visa, say he doesn't stay here or something, no problems, better than trying on Germans, because there'll be some legal comeback if we make a mistake. But he didn't. So he was conscientious in that point of view, from a professional point of view, and I was impressed on that one point. And he was the one who said about the hate, the depression, and homosexuality, and the effect instantaneously of what they were, that all these things started to come up, like a correspondence to what the doctor had said. I was impressed of the skill that, left to myself, I would never understand what basically was wrong, and that was the fundamental concept discovered by psychoanalysis. Left to yourself, you will go round and round the problems, and you will never discover them. You make great effort to make sure you don't know what's wrong or something. That is the situation I am in. But at the moment, unfortunately, because I lost my career, which I put a lot of money, I lost my marriage and all the money, I'm sort of given up now.
Did you ever meet persons who could express themselves so vitally as you do?
I don't know. I once asked Dr. Marx, the first doctor. He said, yes, we have had a young girl with some sexual problems, but she's better now. I said, I would like to meet her, because I'd like to know what it was that, she said, we don't do that over here. I said, well, why not? It's up to her to make a decision whether she could talk to another patient to encourage him. Yes, I survived psychoanalysis, sort of thing. I couldn't see that. Yeah, that's not yours. New man. Hello.
He was present all the time, but on the point of the injection.
Okay. That was a very painful injection, by the way. Why was it so painful before?
Because something went wrong with the machine.
The machine?
Yeah. The pressure
blood
did
pressure.
not went sufficiently down.
My blood pressure didn't go as low, or the machine didn't register.
Now, the machine did not go down at the moment it had to go down. So there was more pressure on the arm.
Oh, I see.
So,
next time they're going to be another mission. Or repair. Yeah. I feel even if I listen to the tape back, there's nothing on that I've not heard many times before.
oh no, but you know everything.
Sorry?
You know everything.
Well, not really, no. We don't know what happened about the bad conscience. Unfortunately, under the
No,
I can blame Maya for the rest of my life for missing the toilet.
I hardly got an opportunity to ask you
Yes.
what the bad conscience comes from.
Yeah, you'd have to revive the bad conscience itself. That sense of fear, you know, would have to come back.
And it's not so difficult with the bad conscience.
Well, it persisted for a long. See, for example, when I first...
As a young boy, you must have perceived that you could be very aggressive.
Well, in England, that's an important thing.
And to express it is not so easy.
Oh, well, I think I did quite well. I was in boxing, I just had my nose redone. The aggression wasn't the problem. No,
So
there's no doubt I'm a classic psychoanalytic case from the point of view of the bad conscience. And when I first met Maya, I admire this from Maya, I didn't have the bad conscience in July or whenever I first saw him. And he just talked generally what books I like and so on like that. And I said to him, The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, as amongst others. He said, you see, they are the stories of bad conscience. And I said, well, I don't have a bad conscience. But the moment I went out there, I started to shake. I said, he's right. And I told my wife, I said, when you go home, they said, well, what did he say? I said, well, he said I have a bad conscience or something.